GN Saibaba to the Bhima Koregaon 12, from poet B.B. Rao to young activists speaking out against the CAA NRC legislation and the annexation of Kashmir, we are seeing gross violations of human rights and basic freedoms taking place under the guise of stopping unlawful activities. Speaking out is only a risk because the state wants us to shut up and stay down. But it's our duty to do the best that we can for our community.
सभी का खून है शामिल यहाँ की मिट्टी में. He's referring to India, the soil of India. सभी का खून है शामिल यहाँ की मिट्टी में. ये किसी के बाप का हिंदुस्तान नहीं है. जय हिंद.
Duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to fight for our freedom.
It is our duty to win.
It is our duty to win.
We must love and protect each other.
We must love and protect each other.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
We have nothing to lose but our chains.
Right? So when folks try to say that, what does black liberation have to do with what's happening in India or Indian people's struggle, period, right? We have a long history of struggle together that we have to uncover.
1% of the Indian population owns 58% of the wealth in India. If you put another 10%, let me just get it right, 10%, add 10% to it, they own 80.7%. So 90% of the Indian population lives on 20% of the wealth generated in India. Indian government has to wake up. Indian people have to wake up. But we have become our worst masters ourselves. And unless we change, nothing will happen.
That as in the United States, they're taking advantage of labor by dismantling union rights, voting rights, suppressing leaders, and stepping up racist and sectarian oppression. The problems of India is the problems in the United States. That's our problem. Any problems with labor that labor has in India, it should be a problem that is felt by the labor movement here in the United States. Our union movement is drastically going down. And in India, the same thing. With gig workers, with transient workers, migrant workers, the union membership has drastically going down. That has to be fought. It has to be fought here, in India, and all over the world.
अब तमाम कौमों को जो अक़लियतें हैं, जो माइनॉरिटीज़ हैं, उनको फिर एक मर्तबा दबाया जा रहा है, उनके ऊपर हुकूमत की जा रही है. हमको इसको मिलकर ख़त्म करना होगा, इन हालात को ख़त्म करना होगा. फिर एक मर्तबा उसी तरह की जंग आज़ादी शुरू करनी होगी, क्योंकि आपके सामने मौजूद है CAA NRC किस तरह के लागू किया जा रहा है. ये तमाम चीज़ें आप हम महसूस कर सकते हैं कि कितनी कोशिशों के बाद हमने इस मुल्क को आज़ाद किया था.
There can be no freedom for the masses of black people under the white supremacist capitalist system. We are seeing fascist state violence, and we're living through a turning point carceral boom in this nation. The U.S. bears its shame in these recent months on the global stage, with over 14,000 political arrests made since the end of May, 11,000 of which were made in the first 10 days of the Floyd uprisings. We are seeing people be dragged off the street into unmarked vans. We are watching the U.S. empire lose its legitimacy and resorting to brute violence to suppress the growing movement for liberation.
What does this independence mean for those poor people that cannot present paperwork to even prove their citizenship in the countries they've been living in their entire lives? What does this independence mean in the face of increasingly fascistic violence by Modi and his right-wing mobs on the streets of Delhi, on the streets all across India?
That's right.
Every chance they get, they try to remove the basic protections, the basic guarantees for workers, for peasants, for people all across India that guarantee their right to live in peace. We must keep turning out, and we must stay in the streets until we have our freedom, until we have our liberation, by any means necessary. Looks like still a myth. I think the India, what we got transfer of power in 1947, qualitatively nothing has changed. Like Abba was telling today, the 1% of the population holds 58% of the wealth in the country, while India, especially last 25 years, has generated a lot of wealth. But of what we are seeing, this repression of this Bhima Koregaon incident, there's just any 10th standard student can also tell. Varavara sitting in Hyderabad to Anand Teltumbe, to the connection to the Bhima Koregaon has been such a fabricated one. Yet a person like Varavara with 81-year-old, he contracted COVID. They're 2 years under trial. I mean, the trial hasn't begun, but they have been holding them in court, and they were not even issuing. The convicted killers have been given bails recently.
What does this democracy mean when our elected representatives behave more like kings and queens rather than representatives? So all of this voting day, all of the theater, what do we get at the end of it? We're getting governments and people who are behaving like monarchs.
That's right.
And I'm actually calling out to the diaspora, people like us from India with connections to India, who have roots here, who are establishing roots here in the US, while they enjoy the ability to eat, drink, pray at a place of their choice, participate in cultural events, enjoy the ability to speak their mind, cheer on other South Asian leaders running for office, demand racial justice, stand in solidarity with Black Lives Matter movement. I call on to the diaspora to support and stand others calling for equality and justice in India. Join us and speak out. That would be a way to honor India's independence.
Saibaba is a professor of English at Delhi University who was arrested in 2014 under trumped-up charges under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, a draconian law in India. It's essentially a fascist law that can be used to lock people up with very little any kind of legal procedure or anything like that. He was arrested actually so suddenly that his wife Visanta went and later tried to file a missing persons report because she didn't even know that he'd been arrested. He just was gone one day. And since then, the treatment that he's received in jail, so Saibaba uses a wheelchair. He had polio as a child, and because of that, he does not have the use of his legs. He uses a wheelchair, and in jail, the police have just treated him awfully with regard to his disability, breaking and saying that they lost his wheelchair, incarcerating him in a cell where the only bathroom was on the second floor, so that without a wheelchair he had no option but actually to rely on the help of prisoners around him to get to the second floor to just accomplish the most basic sanitary tasks.
The US and other imperialist countries actively dominate and profit from what's going on in India. They export capital there, they set up factories where they can exploit Indian workers at a lower rate than here in the United States. So that means actually oppressed and exploited people in this country, the people, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, all these people who are in power in this country, they are massively strengthened by the profits they make by exploiting people in other countries around the world. That's right.
During the pandemic, 23% of folks have lost jobs or have closed businesses. 60% have had a reduction in salary. This is in India. And we also more than 100 million workers walk with their feet, bleeding, and they're, and dying of either starvation or, just out of dehydration. Is it a crime to talk about Kashmir and the open air prison? That's what Gautam Navlakan and other folks were doing. Right. Is it a crime to talk about the indigenous people, about Dalits, about all these people who are being put in prison? And that's what all these human rights lawyers, the PK-12, were doing. Is this a crime? This is a Is this a crime to talk about migrant workers, the LGBTQ folks who are going to be affected by the CAA, right? So is this a crime? Or is this government criminal? Is this BJP and RSS government criminal for putting all these people in prison? And we have to, just like we kicked out the British from thousands of miles away, and they never, and we have to do the same thing with this criminal government.
Right, so show me what democracy looks like!
This is what democracy looks like!
Show me what democracy looks like!
This is what democracy looks like!
Show me what democracy looks like!
This is what democracy looks like!
Thank you, everyone!